Hello everybody, this is going to be a little video about this beautiful book. It's called The Fantastic Four Seasons. It's by an artist called Fafahé and it's by the Pegasus Publishing House. And it's called The Four Seasons because if you look in the cover, the artist tells us a little bit about the Greek mythology, the story about Demeter and Persephone, and how in Greek legend they created the four seasons. And basically the book is dedicated to designs of that nature. So there's a lot of goddesses, a lot of lovely different scenes. So nighttime scenes, daytime scenes. For those of you who like to colour more than just kind of trees and flowers, there's lots of people to colour in, lots of goddesses, lots of mythology. And I guess because it's the four seasons, your imagination can run wild. So you can think about winter scenes, summer scenes, and some of the designs are really, really pretty, really pretty. Just let you have a look at some of them there. Beautiful book, beautiful book. I want to show you the one that I've been working on, which is this one here. And as you can see, it's kind of a little tree house in the middle of, it's not a jungle, I would say it's an enchanted kind of forest look, forest feel. And what I'm going to do is you can see that I've completed it all bar one side of the house here and this mushroom. And I wanted to do a tutorial on firstly blending. I'm using Prismacolor pencils and I blend with them in a specific way. So I wanted to show you that. And then I want to show you how I think about light sources. So you can see here where the moon has lit the top of the roof where the moonlight hits, and the highlights on these toadstools and mushrooms. I want to show you what my thought process is in terms of colouring those in. So as I say, I use Prismacolor pencils. I will give you the colours as we go along. I also wanted to show you these, which I've also used, which are Finatec metallic watercolour paints. I've got a 3-0 very small tip brush. I used mostly the Arabic Gold, which is this one, for some highlights on the roof and also down the front of the door. And then I used the silver colour for the silvery moon. But other than the paint, it's all Prismacolors and maybe a tiny little bit of glitter gel pen here and there. But as I say, 95% Prismacolor pencils. So let's start by doing this part of the house here. Now, what I've done is I've kind of made the windows so that they look a little bit lit up, so that it looks like there's someone home, which I always think is quite cute because it means that you can play around with light sources as well and create your own light sources. So I've got my Prismacolor pencils here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start in the middle of these windows. I'm just going to start with a lemon yellow. So I'm thinking about highlight, I'm thinking about the lightest part of the window, and all I'm going to do is just gently, medium firm, in lemon yellow, just in the middle of those panes. So I'm going to recreate what I've got over here. Just scumble in, so little circles. Just gently scumble in some highlights of that lemon yellow. And then all we're going to do is take the next colour, which is canary yellow. A little bit of a short pencil there, you can see I've used it quite a lot. And then all I'm going to do is just around the outside of those panes, again, just scumble in a medium firm hand around the edges, just so the centre of each pane is the lightest, thinking in terms of light sources coming from inside the house, like that. And then all I'm going to do is quickly go back to my lemon yellow and in a little bit of a firmer hand, just go over where the two colours meet to blend them in a little bit, like that. Then I've got, for my window frame, I've got Zig Wink of Stella, which is just a glitter gel pen. And I'm just going to quickly, because I think it looks nice with a little add a bit of sparkle, I'm just going to quickly, very straightforward, colouring in, just put some gold in those window frame panes, like that. Now, here comes the magic bit. What we want is, because I said I wanted this to look like a tree house, so I've used, you can see I've used burnt oranges and browns, but the trick is you've got a light source here, so you've got a light on inside this room, and you want the side of the house to look like it's lit up, so you can see here that there's a glow outside of the window because there's a light on inside the house. So how do we create that? Well, it's actually not too complicated. You can see I've got my range of pencils here, and what I'm going to do is basically work from light to dark around the window, and it'll make it look as though the light is playing on the outside of that side of the house. So I'm going to start with my Prismacolor pencil in Jasmine, and I'm going to work through my colours up to here, so the next 4, and as I say, I will read them out to you as we go. Now, what I do for blending Prismacolor pencils, because they're wax based and they're very, very blendable, so I don't use them in the same way as I always use polychromo pencils, so I don't layer them. So the blending technique that I use for Prismacolor pencils goes like this. So I'm just gonna scumble myself in a medium firm hand a little line like this, where I want to put down this jasmine colour, and that's going to be the edge. That's going to be the edge of where I want this colour to stop, and it's in a light hand, so I'm hardly pressing on the paper at all, and you'll be able to see that because if I just zoom in a little bit so you can see that better, you'll hardly be able to see any colour on the page at all. So I'm going to leave this is my blend line, and I'm going to leave this blend line in place there. And then everything in between the edge of the window and that blend line, I'm going to do in a much, much firmer hand. So you can see that I'm laying down more colour now. But I'm leaving that strip on the edge there as my blend line for my next colour. And my next darkest colour that I'm now going to go to, and I'm going to keep my jasmine in my hand, my next colour is yellow ochre. And I'm going to do exactly the same. So I'm just going to gently, gently mark myself out where I want that colour to stop. And then everything in between gets a firmer hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave myself that light blend line, but in between is going to get a much firmer hand, and I'm also going over the blend line that I left of the lighter jasmine shade because I want those two colours to meld in. Now we can go back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the jasmine in a minute and just blend over again where those two colours meet so that it's a really, really seamless finish. So I'm going back to my jasmine, firm hand, and you can see that the Prismacolors blend really well. You don't really need a blending pencil, to be fair, although if you wanted to use one, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so I'm just going to gently darken up this little section here in my yellow ochre, sorry, like that. So now I can put my jasmine down. I'm going to pick up my next deepest colour, which is goldenrod, and I'm going to do exactly the same. So I'm just going to mark myself out in a light hand, leave my blend line in where I want this colour to stop, and then everything else and over the blend line of the previous colour gets a much firmer touch on the paper. And you can see by doing this, by building up your light to dark palette shades, really helps trick the eye into believing that the light is playing off of the side of the building. So you really believe that there is light coming out of this window because you're highlighting the side of the house which is closest to that light source. And you can see where else that I've done it on the page as well. So you can see, as I say, I mentioned before, I've done it on the roof and on the side of these flat mushrooms here, because the light source from that in that case is the moon. You've just got to always think about where your light source is coming from and adjust your palette of colours accordingly. And you don't have to use this particular palette of colours. I just used it because I wanted to make a tree house. You could pick any palette of colours, so you could choose a pink palette, so you could go light pink and almost peach around the window through to kind of deep magentas on the outside that would sit in shade. So you don't have to use the colours that I'm using. My next one is mineral orange. Exactly the same thing, and we're just going to finish off these little bits in the same way. So hopefully you can see A, how I'm blending with Prismacolor pencils, and B, how my mind process is working in terms of light sources. Back to the goldenrod. And I think the more kind of colours you put into a smaller space, the more convincing it becomes. Because you just get that wide range of colours to trick the eye into thinking that that house is lit up. Okay, pumpkin orange. And I'm probably going to finish this now in pumpkin orange, so I don't need to draw myself out a little line where I want this colour to go, because I'm going to finish this little bit off in pumpkin orange. So just in a firm hand. And this is why I kind of use this technique with Prismacolor pencils, because the colours are so vibrant that you don't really need to spend a lot of time layering up, because this technique allows you to blend them very, very quickly without having to layer. And then in this corner, I think I'm going to colour this very little bit in a brown, because it'll be at the back and therefore in shade. But just this little bit here with my pumpkin orange. Firm hand. Quickly back to the mineral orange. Firm hand over that blend line. Magic. So I'm quickly going to take what would be, so if I went past pumpkin orange and into brown, I'd be looking at a burnt ochre colour, which is a very kind of warm, light brown colour. And I'm just going to quickly put that in there like that. So we're done with the house. Now what I want to show you is the mushroom, the toadstool rather. It's a toadstool, I think. And we are at this point thinking about two light sources. So we have the light source coming from this window, which will hit the toadstool here. And we also have, it's out of shot now, but if I put my paintbrush like that, where my paintbrush is pointing is to the silver moon that I showed you earlier. So we've got a light source coming in this direction, and we've got a light source coming in this direction. So the highlight on the toadstool, the lightest colour will be around the top left-hand corner. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to work from yellow to red. So a little bit like the one that you can see here. Well, exactly like the one you can see there, because I'm using the same colour palette. And again, just thinking about those light sources, making sure that your light to dark is coming from top left to bottom right, because that's where your light sources are. So I'm going to start with my lemon yellow. So again, I'm using my Prismacolor pencils. And all I'm going to do is make a little arc, just gently, because I'm only marking out where I want the colour to be. My little blend line. like that, and then everything in between I press on with a firmer hand, like that. Canary yellow, exactly the same. Gently, 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 gently scumble in a little marker, firmer in between and over the blend line of the lighter lemon yellow. And if you're just learning about blending, I would really recommend you try these pencils because, as I say, they're so soft and vibrant. They do a lot of the work for you. So now I'm going into kind of yellowy oranges. My next colour that I've got out is Sunburst Yellow. And all I'm going to do is, basically for the rest of this toadstool, is work through my colours in exactly the same way. So I have an Instagram page. My name is Claire Holoway. My surname's a little bit unusual. It's only got one L, so it's Holoway. I have an Instagram page where I show a lot of my coloured artwork pieces, and I also have a free YouTube channel where I do a lot of colouring tutorials. So if you wanted to check either of those out, the YouTube channel is just called Claire Holoway Colouring. And I do a lot of, I've done a lot of tutorials on there, including blending and including toadstools, but I've also done some basic glass and wood and hair and skin tone. So if you have 5 minutes to have a look, you'll find an awful lot of useful information on there if you're learning to colour. I've got some tutorials on chameleon pens. There's a tutorial actually on how to use those metallic watercolour paints that I showed you earlier, the Finitech paints. They're also branded now, actually, those as Coliro. They used to be called Finitech, those metallic watercolour paints, but they're actually now called Coliro. I'm trying to think what else. I've got some tips and tricks on how to colour realistic animals. So this is my Spanish orange that I'm using now. I've got some tutorials on how to create an ocean background and sky. There's a sunset tutorial. So if you've got, if you're learning to colour and you want some tips and tricks for various techniques, then please do go and have a look at the channel at Claire Holoway Colouring, because I think you'll enjoy it. So I'm now going to my yellowed orange. And as I say, I'm just working up the palette, always with reference to those light sources. And just getting darker and darker into the oranges and the reds as we go further away from the light. So just bear with me, because I know it's kind of repetitive, but as I say, the more time you take with a detailed gradation of colours, the more effective the result will be. At least I think so, that's in my experience. And honestly, if I can do this, anybody can do this. I don't have any art qualifications. I've only been colouring for 4 years. I'm self-taught. So seriously, if I can do this, anybody can. Then I'm going to go to pure orange. So I've got my pure orange colour. And don't forget these little bits in the background here. gently mark myself out a little line of where that colour wants to go. Firmer hand in between. I'm probably doing this quicker than I would normally do it, so I don't think it looks, I think it looks quite smooth, but for time constraints of the video, obviously I'm going faster than I usually would. Okay, just checking you can still see that. You can. So now we're going to Pale Vermilion. Just again, mark myself out where I want that colour to be. Don't forget this little bit over here. Little blend line. And once you start to think about light sources and how those light sources play on the colours of everything else in the scene, it starts to look realistic. Because you feel like you could be actually there. And it's just really, really simple things like that. That, as I say, just trick the eye. And it's not rocket science. So we're going further into the red now, so I've got poppy red. Again, I'm just going to mark my little arc out because we're getting into a bigger space now, so I'm just doing this by eye. And then I'm going to scumble in my little line. And you can see, for all I'm doing this quickly, I still don't need a blender pencil, which is why I love these pencils so much. I like vibrant colours. And I do have polychromos, and as I say, I do have a couple of tutorials with them I coloured a dahlia flower from one of Joanna Basford's books with polychromos. And it's a little bit of a different technique. And certainly when I've used Prismacolors to create realistic animals, I've used the layering, the standard layering blending technique. So as I say, if you feel like having a look, by all means go onto the channel, and you can drop me a line on the channel, or you can reach me on my Instagram feed. Poppy red, this we are. Just quickly putting in this little bit. And still leaving that blend line there in a light hand, so I'm not going over that. Just being a little bit careful around these white toadstool spots. I'm not entirely sure what white toadstool spots are actually called, but we'll just call them toadstool spots. And what you can do is, it's a good tip, if you go over these, like I have a tiny bit there, you can either erase it, or I've just got a white gel pen, because I'm going to leave these white. There you go, perfect. So that is just a Signo Uniball broad tip white gel pen. Working my way through, we're going to permanent red. So I hope you found this useful in terms of picking a palette to colour toadstools. But also, I hope that you've learned a little bit about how I blend with Prismacolor pencils. And that you'll be able to start to think about how you can create light sources, because I lit the windows up, you don't have to, but I always think it's more interesting if you can create light sources and just have a real play around with how the colours would bounce off those light sources. And you can see how building up those rich red colours is now paying dividends, because it's starting to look really nice. And because you're going down into undergrowth here as well, so we're further away from the light sources, so the colours are getting darker, but you would also get darker because you're going into the undergrowth. So it's always just a case of thinking about where the light would fall, thinking about the highlights and the shadows. Where does that leave us? That takes us to Scarlet Lake. So I'm just going to finish these little bits off down here. And I think Fafahé's designs lend themselves to Prismacolors because they're very imaginative. And this one in particular, this is why I picked this one, strikes me as being a page where you can get really bold and imaginative with your colours. Quickly back to my permanent red. Just go over that blend line. Crimson red. Take it to about there. And it's a good idea when you pick your palette to play around with your colours so that you can, because the closer that you grade them together, the easier they are to blend. The further colours are apart, they're not hard to blend, but they will get harder. And then just literally my last one down here, Crimson Lake. I'm just going to finish off in that shadow. And there we go, we've got a finished piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly put my pencils back. Put those out of the way, and then I'll zoom out because you'll be able to see the full finished piece. So hopefully that's been really useful. Thank you for listening along. Any questions, as I say, drop me a line on Claire Holoway Colouring, my Instagram page or my free YouTube channel. Enjoy, guys. Bye.